Okay, so the outside structure of the cabin's finished, but there's still a lot of work to do. Come inside with me and I'll show you how I'm decorating the inside of a commercial panel structure to look more homely. And I'm also going to show you how we put the power and the plumbing through the walls when there's no cavity inside. But it's still looking like the inside of a fridge. This area here had a lot of screw holes in it, so I've used automotive filler to fill the screw holes after denting them in a little to give some thickness. And I'm going to sand that off shortly. Once I've sanded it off, I've got something really special to show you. I'll just clean up the dust off the wall and along the bottom here, and then I can show you the fabulous product that I've found online. Now, for a long time now, I've kept a fairly close eye on Joe Rogan. He makes me smile. I like his hairstyle, and he interviews some cool people. And over the years of watching Joe, I've noticed that his studio had a sudden makeover about 2 to 2.5 years ago. I can't quite remember the date. But I noticed that he went for the industrial look all of a sudden. First of all, his studio looked to me like an underground bunker. And then suddenly it looked like an old industrial warehouse. And I noticed that the dimensions of the studio stayed the same. So I believe that what he'd done was installed a facade inside this small studio. And that's exactly what I plan to do. This building is fairly utilitarian. It's a sensible building product for large structures. They use it for food preparation factories and pack houses for fruit and things like that. And in fact, the materials that this cabin that I've built myself, if you have a look at the previous video that's listed up here, it used to be a honey extraction room where they spun the frames from the beehives to extract the honey. So it had to be sanitary, hence these white insulated panels. Joe Rogan's studio, as I say, looks like an old 1900s brick warehouse, but the dimensions had stayed the same. And that gave me a clue that it was that facade that I just mentioned. So I did a little bit of research online and found various ways of replicating a brick wall. A new brick wall, an old brick wall, a damaged brick wall, a brick wall covered in broken plaster, a painted brick wall, and there were various ways of doing it, but most of them were very time consuming and quite messy. But there was one that stuck out to me. Now I know it involves buying new product, and that's not something that I like to do on tiny house and off-grid resources, but I was lucky enough to find some that somebody else had bought. They had 3 rolls of faux brick. Faux as in F-A-U-X, French word, meaning false. So they had this brick wallpaper, if you like, left over, and they were selling it on our online trading platform really cheap. And the best thing was, it's Easter this weekend, and he was going on holiday for Easter, passing my place and offered to drop it off. So let me show you what it is that I've got planned for this scruffy old wall. Here's the product. It's made in South Korea. It's a blow molded polyurethane relief wallpaper. It's 10 millimeters thick, 3/8 of an inch, so it has the texture of real brick. It's available in different colors. I would have preferred this one, but the chap who owned it had bought this one, so I'm going to apply it and then I'm going to paint it to look more like an old-fashioned wall. I've got a few instructions here that were slightly damaged, but I don't need the instructions. I've got a fair idea of how to apply this stuff. Here it is here. It comes on a huge roll. This is the first section that I've cut to length. It's self-adhesive, I'm just going to peel and stick. I want a clean edge down one side, so I'll leave this edge here, but on the other side I'm going to cut around the bricks and then cut around the bricks on the next strip so that the two fit in together just like real bricks. I've never done this before, it's brand new to me, but I have applied large sheets of vinyl on vehicles to change a vehicle's appearance instead of painting it. Indeed, my camper trailer, there's a link up here to that. My camper trailer was made out of this white paneling and then covered in a brushed titanium vinyl sheet. And so I guess that applying this is going to be very much the same. I'm going to start by peeling off a few inches of the backing, and I'll line this up in the corner up here because I want it to run down this line of wall and cleanly across the top. So let's see how we go. Starting to look good. So now I'm just going to peel the backing down from behind it. Gradually work my way down, pushing it in, making sure that it stays lined up with this edge. So the next thing that has to be done to make it really convincing is, instead of applying this thing in straight strips, I'm cutting out the half bricks so that on the next run the full bricks can fit in there, making it look like one continuous wall. Joins between each strip because I have taken the time to knock out the half bricks and make it look real. Now the second thing you're going to notice is that I've gone crazy with a paintbrush, and that's because this is the beginning of me making this much more convincingly like a old workshop interior wall, a warehouse, a loft. This is only the beginning. It's very, very random what I'm doing, and that is just mixing some brown paint with some orange paint, dab by dab on the brush, so that sometimes my brush has more orange, sometimes my brush has more brown. You'll see it when I've completed the whole thing. You'll see that it is very convincingly like a genuine wall, but there are stages to go through. Just like the great artists don't always look as though it's the finished item when they first start. They've got to start somewhere. So this is purely intuitive. I've got a rough idea of how it works, but I'm no expert. You can see that I've started off with a dark brown paint that I found that's been around for years in the shed, and I just gave it a wisp of light grey primer over the top in varying degrees on each of these feature bricks. Now that I've done that, I'm filling in the general wall with varying shades of orange to brown, and after that's dry I'll put some detailing over it, probably some more grey, maybe even a little touch of green here and there. And then I'll get a small thin brush and I'll finish off the pointing. I'll get a cement colour and I'll go through the whole wall doing the cement pointing. It'll be great when it's finished. Okay, I haven't made you sit through another 2.5 hours of me applying this because it was just more of the same. But you can see that there's no visible joins between each strip because I have taken the time to knock out the half bricks and make it look real. Because this stuff is slightly stretchy, if it doesn't quite meet, you can stretch it by 2 or 3 millimeters to make it perfect. And the added bonus that I've got is when this is finished, I'm going to paint it. So that means that I'll be able to disguise any bits that aren't absolutely perfect with a little bit of colour and texture. Because what I'll be doing is mixing crushed pumice in with the paint. That will knock the gloss out of the paint completely and make it look like flat brick, and also give it the sandy type texture that bricks have. So it should be very convincing when it's finished. Oh, and by the way, the adhesive is incredibly sticky. So it's starting to come together now, right? There's still a lot more work to do, but what I'm doing is just absolutely randomly choosing between these two colours. And yeah, there's a bit of mixing going on as well between the pots, but I'm not doing all the bricks in a row. I'll get my brush wet, I'll do a brick. If I've already done bricks around it, I'll be careful not to go over onto them. And then if the brush is wet enough when I finish this brick, I'll continue straight onto another brick elsewhere. That way, when it dries, we're going to have this lovely, natural, earthy wall. And that, I figured, is the best way to stop the inside of this building looking like a refrigerator, because it was built out of a commercial building product that's designed to be clean and neutral, and just these white walls really did nothing for me. I've been building with this material for a lot of years, and the most commonly asked question, well actually no, it's not a question, it's a statement. People tell me, oh, but it gets full of condensation. And I think the reason they're saying that is because their only experience with this building material is possibly site offices or small prefabs, where people are in and out from a building site, and if the weather's not perfect, people are going to have heaters on, it's going to be warm inside, it's cold outside, it's raining, they've got raincoats on and gumboots, there's probably a wet dog underneath the bench next to the heater. No wonder they have condensation problems. How do you fix condensation problems? You open a window. You don't have to open it wide, just crack your windows a little bit to let the condensation out. You need airflow. Now, people say that these prefabricated buildings don't have airflow. Well, an ordinary building made out of sticks and boards doesn't have airflow unless you open windows. Granted, it will breathe imperceptibly gently, but it won't have airflow. There won't be any drafts. They engineer drafts out of homes. They've been fighting to do that for donkey's years. So, don't listen to people's opinions on the EPS foam insulated building panels. Experience it, then you'll know. I've been living in it and building with it for 22 years now. Not constantly, but I've done projects every year Some years I've worked and done projects back to back. There's a lot of people who are realizing that this is a very effective way of building yourself something. Now look, I've just put orange onto my brush, still have some brown on there, and I'm moving away from where I'm working to another brick. And this is going to give me the random effect. Actually, you know what? The random effect. When I stand back and generally look at what I'm doing in here with the leather couch and the big wooden table and the brick wall, I think it's more of a Joe Rogan effect. Oh, and the hairstyle. And I've been told I do have a naughty sense of humour as well, like Joe Rogan. So I've moved from here to here. That was painted previously. When this dries, there will be very slight changes from brick to brick. And that's just what old brick making was about. They didn't care about batches. The clay wasn't mixed particularly well. Firing temperatures changed. Because everything was loaded by hand, a brick at a time, they didn't have forklifts and they didn't have cranes so much. There was a lot of hands-on and things moved and changed. So the bricks did look like this in the old days, whereas now everything is more uniform and perfect. This product that I'm working with, this false brick wallpaper, if you like, this particular one has got very definite grouting lines, and I want to fudge those up a bit. When I start doing the pointing, I'll be doing it with a cream coloured brush to simulate the cement. A creamy grey, if you know what I mean, but I won't be particularly careful with it. I will be going out onto the bricks a little, just to make it look like it's a fatter joint line. I think in the finished video I might throw in a few still shots so that you can see some points that I want to make. People have been asking me in the comments about how do you put wiring and plumbing into these walls, because they're a solid wall. There's so many ways you can do it. You can't actually pick up many tips from builders about this because it's not a product that builders use. The people who do actually build with it, the people who build the factories and the cool stores, they're not the kind of people who get passionate about it and creative with it. They just build huge white boxes that get filled with machinery and people. And it's not a passion like when you're building someone their new tiny home and you're working with them, or you're creating somebody's race car trailer and they're very passionate and excited about what they're getting and they want an involvement. So it's very hard to pick up tricks off people, and that's why I want to make these videos to show you that you can be creative with something that's just an austere white panel. So as I said, different ways of getting the wiring and the plumbing into these builds. The simplest way is not to put it through the walls at all. How I achieve that is by doing the shell in this method, but then the internal dividing walls, I make those out of lumber and sheet so that they're done in the normal way. That leaves a cavity, and that means that I can bring all of my wiring and all of my plumbing up through these cavities and have an unbroken outside wall, but you've got the switches, the light switches, the power points, all where you need them, so long as you're happy with them being on those interior walls. So that's one way. The way that the people who build cabins and whatnot out of this generally do it is they put all of the services down the back wall of the cabin on the outside, and the wiring and the plumbing is all run externally and then just punched through where it's needed. And you'll find that the sink bench is always on the back wall. You'll find that the shower is always against the back wall. You'll find that most of the light fittings are on the back wall because it's easy. You can core drill through this stuff and bring a power point or a light fitting out in the middle of a panel. It can be done. I do that with a lot of silicon spray, an electric drill, and a piece of conduit. I cut the end of the plastic conduit so that it's got large teeth on it, 4 large serrations like this. And I do that with a hacksaw or a cutting disc on a grinder. And then I will spin that with an adapter that I've made in a cordless electric drill, and I can remove a core of the inside polystyrene, and you can then put a piece of conduit up inside permanently and run your wires through it, or water pipe can go in directly. So it can be done that way. Now, another question that people have asked is about the floating floor. Why do you do a floating floor? And that is when the floor is dropped down in panels inside the walls after the walls have been erected. It's not normal building practice. The reason we do it is when I'm using the same building material that these cabins are made from, the expanded polystyrene rigid structural panels, if I drop those down and use them as a floor, it's a good floor. It's firm, but it's slightly sprung. It's more comfortable and livable than either a concrete pad or a wooden floor. You need insulation anyway, so why not use the panel that you're using for the rest of the build as the floor? But the problem with building it in the normal way, putting the floor down first and then putting the walls on, is that you'll have the core of the panel exposed all the way around the building. That has to be covered up. So it's double the amount of the channel extrusion that you use as the base to put the panels into for the wall. You've got to go once around the building again with more of that. So it's more expense, but the main reason is the edges of these panels is fairly movable, being expanded polystyrene core. They will squish. So you can't go building a wall on top of a squishy foundation. You can't put your walls on your floors and then support the weight of a roof or even a second story up there and have it bearing down onto the edges of a squishy panel. That's why you do the floating floor system. I did say in the first video, but it's something that I like to reiterate, is you will spend more time designing your building built out of this stuff than you will making it. There's several things that are important. You need to choose your windows before you do your build. If you do that, then you can order your panel to fit around your windows and not have to buy all the panel, then cut the holes, remove a piece and put the window in. If you do that, you're paying for material and then throwing it away. So you choose your windows first. You try not to buy windows that are any narrower than the width of the panel. The panel is 1200 mils, which is close to 4 feet. You want to choose windows that are the same or wider. That way you simply order a piece for the bottom of the window, a piece for the top of the window, and the window fits in the middle. There is no waste. Doors the same way, of course, but doors aren't, the average door is 9 An external access door is 920 wide. Domestic passage doors from one room to another are around 780 to 820 wide. So you're gonna have to chop some out of a sheet. You will have waste in doorway. So that's a little bit unavoidable unless you're going to do big industrial style doors 1200 wide. Or French doors. Or ranch sliders. Sorry, there's always exceptions. Important things to remember. Oh yes, something very exciting that I want to share. The torsional strength of this stuff is insane. 100mm thick panel, which is what I've used here, spanning a 3 meter distance, can support 200 kilograms per square meter, which is just nuts, with no trussing, no beams underneath it. So it's awesome for sleeping lofts in tiny houses. If it's firmly, rigidly attached to the walls using plenty of rivets and a good quality glue, if you build it like they build an aeroplane wing, you will end up with a clean look with no framing underneath it, which is great because the framing would take up approximately this much room. So that means that much less headroom when you're underneath in the kitchen or bathroom, or less headroom when you're upstairs in the loft. So for tiny homes, this is a great building system. What else have I got for you? You can make do buying for joining this stuff. You can make do with just buying lots and lots of angle. Sometimes angle is at a subsidized price because it's a very commonly sold section, and you'll get angle cheaper than you'll get channel because A, it's got less aluminium in it, and B, it's more commonly sold. But you'll end up with a dirty look. You'll end up with something that looks more industrial. So I prefer to use the channel and use it wherever I can. Costs a little more but gives you a clean look. I did explain in the first video that there are 3 ways you can make a corner joint where one wall joins another. And then of course there's a couple of ways where you can join your roof. In this application I wanted to have an overhang, so I used long roofing screws and screwed down into the top plate. If you're building a road vehicle, you'll want a clean aerodynamic approach. So you won't want overhangs. You'll achieve that either by using square corners and aluminium angle inside and out, or if you shop around you can find a really sexy extrusion that is curved on the outside but has a 90-degree on the inside and 2 slots that you can slide the panels into. So you don't have to prepare the edges of the panels at all. You just have raw edge panel straight into the slot and you get a beautiful 100mm radius on the corners. Fitting chimneys for fireplaces. Pretty much the same as any other building. Cut a hole in it, put a sleeve through, waterproof it on the outside, put a trim plate on the inside and fit your fireplace. It's not hard. Do you know what a Faraday cage is? A Faraday cage is a device that stops EMFs, electromagnetic fields, the kind of thing that comes from power lines, radiation from cell phone towers, radiation from smart meters. A Faraday cage consists of either a fine mesh like on a microwave door or the double skinning of a microwave cabinet. When you have something double skinned with a gap in between, that's a very effective Faraday cage for keeping out or keeping in EMFs. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to have any electrical pollution in your home, You design the inside of your home to operate without electricity, and that will eliminate it from the inside of your home. But the great thing is, this material is an awesome Faraday cage, and aside from your windows, it will stop EMFs coming through the walls. So there's still a lot to do in here, but I'm calling this end pretty well finished. I'm really happy with the way the walls come up. Now in the next video, you'll see how I turned a 50-year-old fire extinguisher into something that looks 80 years old. It's not really brass. But don't tell anybody. Other jobs I'll be doing in here is using a now unavailable old New Zealand native timber called Rimu. Rimu will be forming the inside window frames and some shelving up here. It's a lovely old timber that we haven't been able to fell for probably the last 20 to 25 years. So no furniture's being made out of Rimu anymore. No homes are being made out of Rimu. It's a part of our past. And I'm going to bring it in here so that I can be surrounded with old things. So check back over the next few videos. You're going to see a lot of stuff going on in here, as well as the building of the second cabin, which is going to join through my portal in the far end of this one. The two cabins are going to be in an L configuration, and they'll surround my deck outside, giving me a lovely sheltered area away from the wind. So if you like to recycle, refurbish, rebuild, and save a bit of money, why not subscribe to the channel? There's videos like this every week, and in every one I'll show you how you can save bucks.